Welcome everyone to tonight's March MFA Reading series here at Rosemont College. Tonight's readers are Joe Magee, Pietra Dunmore, Ionata, Joe Starnes, and myself, Carla Spataro, the Black Cat. The spaceship shimmers into existence, a silvery floating orb, spinning but not spinning over the fallow soybean fields, as if Jennifer has willed it there in her sleep. The aliens, who don't know the difference between dreaming and wakefulness, snatch her from her bed where she lies sleeping next to her husband. She is relaxed, but cannot control her movements. She sees her body floating like she is outside herself, and yet still inside herself, looking out and down at her husband still asleep. His feet are tangled in the sheets, his knees poking out from under the blankets. Their black cat is curled on his side, his head twisted upside down, chin pointing at the ceiling. As Jennifer lifts up into the air, the cat opens one glassy eye and watches her float up and out and away. Jennifer feels herself being pulled toward the spaceship. She looks down, and the cat covers his eye with his paw, burrows deeper into the blankets tangled around her husband's feet. Jennifer is not afraid, though she knows she should be, as the invisible alien force pulls her past the chimney of the farmhouse that has been in her husband's family for 3 generations. The rusty wind vane spins counterclockwise as she drifts by, her thin nightgown billowing like a sail. She thinks the cat might be floating out the window behind her, paws still over his eyes. The cat, she supposes, is thinking, not this again, not these idiots. Jennifer suspects that the cat thinks anything that is not also a cat is an idiot, including her. The sunflowers in the fields below bow their heavy heads as she breezes by. Jennifer wonders if she'll be back tomorrow, or if the aliens will take her to their homeworld in a distant galaxy. She wonders if the black cat will miss her if she doesn't return. She wonders if the aliens really even think about tomorrow, or about what time means to folks who live in an old farmhouse, who sleep with a black cat curled at the foot of their bed. The floating makes her feel like maybe she is dreaming, and yet she can feel the softness of the late summer breeze as it brushes the fine hairs on her arms. She can smell the foreshadowing of autumn. She frequently has dreams that she can fly, but those dreams are never like this. In those dreams, she soars over rooftops like a superhero, or buzzes at light speed as she skims across the ocean. Her husband laughs when she tells him about those dreams. Everyone has dreams they can fly, he says. Now she is floating, which is not flying exactly, but close enough. She thinks about the cat. Why did he only open one eye? Has he seen spaceship abductions before? Is this something the cat knows all about? As Jennifer approaches, the spaceship seems suspended on visible wires that hang down from the moon, and Jennifer is suspended too, awaiting entry. Will she be probed? Is this what the black cat was smirking about with his one eye open, watching as Jennifer floated away against her will? What do she and her husband know about that cat anyway? One day it was just Jennifer and her husband toiling away on their soybean farm, and the next the cat appeared with its silky black fur and its fish-scale green eyes, demanding to be loved, only wanting food in return for affection. Or so it seemed. Perhaps the cat is some kind of advanced scout, telepathically communicating with aliens, telling them what an excellent candidate Jennifer would be for whatever the aliens had in mind. The spaceship is silver, of course, and shaped like 2 frisbees, one on top of the other. It spins and is yet not spinning, and when the hatch slides open, Jennifer floats up inside. What Jennifer notices first is the absence of everything. No smell, no sound. Then there is. The hatch slides close beneath her, and she finds herself standing inside a great white room filled with hamburger meat. Pink, grainy, juicy, bloody hamburger meat. Time passes. She's unsure what to do. Why haven't the aliens tried to communicate with her? At last, she stands and walks across the room. She takes a handful of hamburger meat, rolls it between her hands, and flattens it into a patty. She puts the patty in the saute pan and turns on the stove. Soon the whiteness of the room is filled with the aroma of seared meat, of cooked cow flesh, the sugars caramelizing, turning brown, forming a crust, while inside the hamburger is still pink and juicy and slightly bloody. Jennifer hopes the aliens will come once they smell the cooking hamburgers. She makes many trips across the smooth white room and takes many handfuls of meat, The room is not just filled with the savory perfume of sizzling burgers, but also the sweet aroma of commercial ketchup, the sour tang of yellow mustard, the yeasty, springy pleasure of freshly baked white buns, warm from crusty, bloody burgers. She becomes so engrossed in her cooking that she forgets about the laundry and her husband and the sheriff, and that she is hungry. Surely the aliens will come now, Jennifer thinks. There are so many hamburgers. She's been cooking for hours. Or maybe it's impossible to know. Her hands are covered with hamburger blood and ketchup and mustard, crusted with pickle juice and bun crumbs. She wants to wipe her hands, but doesn't want to smear the blood and ketchup and mustard on her nightgown. The aliens have thought of everything but a sink and an apron. Well, Cat washes himself by licking. Maybe the aliens expect her to do the same. After she has cooked all the hamburger meat and all that is left is a ring of bloody pinkness on the white floor, after Jennifer has stacked all the buns now filled with burgers, topped with ketchup and mustard and pickles and onions and sliced tomato, the aliens finally show up to eat. They enter the room as a group, shuffling in one behind the other, small and flimsy looking, like unpainted piñatas. They are preceded by the cat, whose black fur and fish-scale green eyes glow in stark whiteness. Well, the cat meows. It was you, Jennifer says, bending low, pointing a sticky finger in the cat's face. No, the cat replies. He licks his paw, then rubs it against his whiskered cheek. No, he meows again. It was always you, Jennifer. Me? What are you talking about? The cat does not reply, but instead winds his way between Jennifer's bare legs. He flicks his tail twice towards the shuffling group of aliens who push past Jennifer, their ashy wasp paper skin brushing her bare arms like floating scraps of singed newsprint. They do not speak to Jennifer. They are the size of children. Their heads are long and egg-shaped. Their eyes are giant, opaque almonds that sparkle like polished onyx. Their skinny gray bodies are fragile and out of proportion to their heads. They have no lips, but frown-shaped slits for mouths, with rows and rows of tiny pointed teeth. Tucked up in the crook between their legs, they appear to have tiny paper phalluses, but Jennifer doesn't want to stare. They speak to her in their language, but she doesn't understand what they're saying. They nudge her aside. She says, "Do you like the hamburgers?" The cat sits before her and tilts his head. "What do you think?" he mews. The aliens click their hidden tongues, make sloppy, high-pitched slurping noises. They chew and swallow, chew and chirp, chew and click. Their mouths are full of hamburger. The cat purrs and walks among them, rubbing his head on their papery ankles. Jennifer tries to count how many there are, but she can't keep track. They are messy. Bits of food fall from their frowny mouths as they chew. They smear the food on the floor as they shuffle among each other, smear it on the walls with their mummy-skinned hands. Her stomach growls. She reaches for a hamburger, but a gray-faced, onyx-eyed alien steps forward and shakes his head. He holds a long, bony finger up to his frown-shaped mouth and blinks. The cat stands perfectly still, and Jennifer nods. She checks to make sure her nightgown is buttoned and thinks the alien's eyes are the same shade of black as the cat's fur. Eventually, the aliens eat all the hamburgers. The cat curls in the corner near the stove where it is warm. Jennifer rubs her eyes. She has been cooking hamburger for what feels like a very long time. When she opens her eyes, the aliens are gone. They've shuffled soundlessly out of the room in the space of a blink. The cat is gone too, and Jennifer is alone with the mess. The room looks like an intergalactic crime scene. Ketchup, pale rings of hamburger blood, bits of onion and bun are smeared on the walls, ground to the floor. She hears a grinding noise and a sink appears. Dish soap, a mop, a bucket. Jennifer turns in the direction. She thinks they've all disappeared. "Cat!" she shouts. "You tell those lousy aliens that I'm not going to clean up after them. They made this mess. They can clean it up." An image of the cat, or the cat itself, she can't be sure, materializes before her, flicking its tail. "Did they make this mess, Jennifer? Or was it you? Isn't this your mess?" He gazes at her with his fish-scale green eyes. He lifts his chin expectantly. "Whose mess is this?" Jennifer starts to argue, and then the cat flickers and dissolves into space, or the next room. Who knows? She sighs, her bones feel heavy. Aren't things supposed to feel lighter in space? First, she scrubs the saute pans, and then the griddles, and then the massive stove. Next, she wipes on the walls, erases the spidery handprints, the splatter of ketchup and mustard. Finally, she mops the floor. The room is white and glowing and smells like sunshine after a rain shower. She sets the mop back in the bucket, and the hatch in the white floor slides open. Jennifer floats out through the ship that is spinning but not spinning, back into the night sky, suspended above her old farmhouse that has been in her husband's family for 3 generations. The rusty wind vane whirls counterclockwise as she floats by. The sunflowers in the fields bow their heads. She glides in through her bedroom window as her feet touch the floor. The black cat at the end of the bed stirs slightly, opening one eye, and then snuggles deeper into the blankets that are tangled around her husband's feet. Our next reader is Joe Magee.
It's called Heartbeats. And rushed out of the house furious, fist clenched, heart pounding, down the porch steps, across the lawn, over the wooden fence post, into Bishop's yard, and on through waves of heat, shimmering off trash cans, cars, blacktop, running hard until everything was behind her. And when she reached the top of the dirt trail that weaved through Fisher's Woods, her clothes stuck to her skin, which really didn't bother her. What really bothered her was that her parents wouldn't stop fighting. They were so embarrassing. She could never have friends over again. And it was at this point that everything blurred. Everything spun madly about. And as she stumbled forward through the blur, thinking she was going to fall, but managed to find a low-hanging branch to hold onto. Okay. And when she looked up, a mess of clouds had come out of nowhere to blot out the sky. And she didn't know what to make of that, except that it was impossible, as was the gray haze and chilly breeze now descending quickly upon her. All of this impossibleness accompanied by a growing tension throughout her body that deepened even as she watched the heavy mist sweep through the woods below. And when the mist cleared, the pines were gone, replaced by a series of clay huts, thatched roofs, timber posts from which depended swaying lanterns, a complete makeshift village appearing out of nowhere. And along with that came the sense that she felt different, as if a hidden part of herself was unspooling. And she wondered if she was dreaming, seeing and feeling things that weren't real. And all these thoughts were interrupted by streams of laughter from the center of the village, the source of the laughter, a gray-robed couple sitting at one of the wooden tables. And something about the man's deep voice immediately caught her attention, drawing her onward, and with every passing second, a part of her that she didn't even know existed grew, and finally wiggled out a sidereal self that enlarged her consciousness, confirming her intuition that the man she was staring at was indeed, and without doubt, her one true love. And Shay could only respond with a little bewildered. How can this be? For Shay now knew that her one true love had agreed to stay out of her life until decades hence. And despite him now wrangling an unnerving change on the positions of her life's key events, suggesting that her life's grand design was being dismantled by forces unknown. But despite these reservations, she wanted to see him, to luxuriate, oh so briefly, in his wonderfulness. And so she hurried down the rock-hewn slope, the sweat on her now chilly limbs cooling with every step, until she reached the leveled-out area where both figures sat at a squared pine table munching strawberries. And there she registered another shock, realizing it was herself her own true love sat talking to, but not the current self, but a wrinkled and worn-out version, the woman she would become late in life, so old she couldn't even guess her future self's age. And then with another shock, she saw it was death, her white-haired self snuggled against, and thus a last jolt following all the others, suspected her own death was being played out on this chilly gray tableau. And at this point, the couple finally noticed her, and future Shay smiled, brushed back her long white hair, shifted in her seat, nodded a welcome, and told her that all conspired to take you away from your path, which made young Shay frown, not understanding at all. But to live, feel death rushing toward you, a frustrated lover circling you and yours with every beat of your heart. And death, his large teeth like pale worms, distorting his face, tightened his grip on the old woman, but Shay felt no terror at all. Instead, a strange contentment blossomed within her, and she backed up the slope thinking she understood everything, until the day's humid glare was around her once more. She was back in the world again, and she ran home with a stifling heat about her, wanting to scream in joy, feeling a part of a wonderful mystery that she needed to hold on to, but was receding with every step. Through the front door open, saw in the living room by the couch her father sprawled motionlessly, limbs askew, shirt coated in blood. Behind the door, her mother holding herself, eyes wide, head shaking, and in the house's bludgeoning heat, Shay could hear nothing but the beating of her heart.
Our next reader is Catherine Ionata.
After the fire, we found coins, edges barely charred. We found coins, not sliced black and white memories of children, now grown and bent to unearth. They garner only soot. They will wash their clothes more than once to be rid of the smoke. No, the only faces preserved are presidents. We found coins, not a Stradivarius left by the Germans during the war, or even its wood-splintered remains. Not passports stamped in Naples, 1953, to have a job meant to sail where automobiles bunched close like sheep. We didn't find tiny spoons, black before the fire, or airmail letters announcing births. We found coins, not a sewing kit, cushions bursting spikes. We found coins, not a vegetable garden, exploded tomato guts and timid basil, not art projects or velvet sofas or knickknacks. There was only ash to excavate. We found a family nickeled and dimed, but not wooden forks, not a lace dress, but coins, only coins. And this is called Saturday After Christmas, 1 a.m. I-95 north home, river on my right, headlights on empty miles, billboards cranked high. Even trash can fires dead now. A detour unneeded, your house unlit, car curved. With half a tank left, I can do anything. Do you remember spring? Parking lot talks, firebird hair, and now something like regret.
So Pietra will be reading some fiction tonight. Please welcome Pietra.
Euphoria. There was a sky blue extra large t-shirt tucked away in the bottom of one of my drawers. It was hidden cautiously underneath summer clothes I no longer wore. I would unearth that shirt, close my eyes, and put the shirt to my nose and inhale. I let myself be overwhelmed by the spicy mixture of ginger, black basil, and amber that I knew intimately, and imagined he was there. My bear, my giant, but he wasn't. That year I had gone out with a string of puppy-eyed men that needed to be needed, adored, and validated, along with being a little too in touch with their feelings. When I met Bear, I was on my way home from another overdrawn date, dejected and tired, with the day's humidity swelling my hair. I drove onto the ramp for 76 and was immersed in the gridlock of traffic. I put on my classic rock mix and zoned out to the Stones. As Emotional Rescue blared from my speakers on my right, a large Chevy Tahoe rolled up, blaring Led Zeppelin's Dazed and Confused. I looked over and smiled. The brown-haired, blue-eyed man inside the truck turned down his radio and asked if I knew a shortcut. He was thick like a tree trunk and looked like he just got finished hauling logs or powerlifting or some other heavy man stuff. Where are you trying to get to? I asked, looking up at his window. Where you're going. He flashed a smile, showcasing a set of perfectly white teeth. What? You heard me. He looked down into my Audi, continuing to smile. I think you're hot. Take my number. Who picks up someone during a traffic jam? He ran his fingers over his thick beard. I do. We spoke and emailed for a while, then we became a thing. We traveled the city at night, going up and down 76, listening to Led Zeppelin at high volume with the windows open. Between What Is and Never Should Be, and Since I've Been Loving You, we would find a spot in East Falls and sit in the back of his Tahoe, making out old school style in July heat, while listening to Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. Bear's nose was particularly slanted, broken and reset several times from his boxing days. He returned my kisses, turning his head to the side to kiss me fully, sucking on my bottom lip and flicking his tongue in my mouth until my lips hurt. We were both out of breath. We lay on the back seat, and I'd look at his sleeve of tattoos. This one is my first. Bear pointed to a green and white Philadelphia Eagles logo in the center of his shoulder. I was 17 when I got it. Then he pointed to the words, Live, Die, Bleed, Philly, seemingly dripping down his arm. I'm down for any Philly team, he roared, and showed me a collage of Flyers, 76ers, and Phillies logos on his forearm. How do you decide what to get, I asked, running my fingers over a Superman logo and Chinese symbols for peace and justice. It has to be something important to me. He pointed to the tattoo of the date 3/13/93 on his upper arm. This is a tribute to my dad. Cancer took him. He turned his wrist over and showed me the male gender symbol. This is because I'm a real man, princess, he said. Bear had strict principles of what a real man should do. One of these rules was that a man should be physically fit. How else can you protect a woman if you have scrawny arms? Then we get dressed, go to the 9th Street gym, and he put on a loose-fitting cut-off t-shirt that showed off the angel wings on his back. Are you ready, I'd asked. I'm born ready, he said as he ran his fingers through his lifting gloves and strapped on his elevation training mask. He was really into powerlifting for strength, and he would pace the gym with heavy, hard steps, then deadlift 500 pounds while making groaning noises. The weights would fall with a clang, and he would exclaim, boom! In fact, he used boom, and I'm born ready for just about any scenario. When I'd affectionately call him my giant and threaten to climb his tall ass like a tree, he'd say, go for it, princess, daring me with his stormy blue eyes. I'm born ready. After we would kiss, boom. As summer turned to fall, and fall gave way to winter, I began to feel confined in our static roles as woman and man. During one of the last conversations we had, he drove us down 76, listening to ramble on. The windows were up, and I watched as the snow fell diagonally in the direction of the car. A brown paper bag with cheesesteak sat on my lap. I had told him minutes before that I had applied for my second master's. You can do better than me, princess. His eyes remaining on the road. You deserve a Monday to Friday 8 to 4 man, a 3 to 4 figures man. We ate cheesesteaks and then made love for the last time. Stairway to Heaven played softly from his speakers. I put on my clothes and walked to the door. We stood waist to waist and talked close for the last time. You will meet an awesome guy one day, he said. I twirled his red beard between my fingers. I know, I replied, kissing him on the cheek. I'm born ready. The shirt is no longer there. Eventually the shirt lost its smell, and for a while it remained setless in the bottom drawer underneath the summer clothes, but on top of an envelope of pictures. The images of Bear and I at the bowling alley, outside gym steaks, at Champs, at a UFC fight, and that one time at Hooters so I could purchase a pair of those iconic orange shorts. The last time was taken on Halloween. He as Wolverine and I as Storm, my head just reaching his shoulder, even with 3-inch heels. Bear's massive hand around my waist, my smile, his tattoos, my career, his string of day labor, the princess and the bear. When I moved in with my puppy-eyed boyfriend that doesn't eat red meat, I cleared out my drawers, folded the pictures inside the shirt, and threw everything away.
So Joe Samuel Starnes' newest novel, Red Dirt, a tennis novel, was published last year by Breakaway Books. He has published 2 previous novels, Calling from Jefferson Press in 2005, which was reissued last year as an ebook by Mysterious Press, Open Road, and Fall Line, which is from New South Books in 2011. So please welcome Sam.
Beginning. The name of it's Big Jim's Boy. I was only 10 years old on that infamous August evening in 1973, 1 year into my life as Big Jim's boy. He told me at the outset that if I was going to be the adopted son of the district attorney for 12 spacious counties in middle Georgia, there was no hiding things from me. My first afternoon hanging around his courthouse office, he'd said, "Son, you live with me, you're going to have to grow up and face the realities of what a man can do to a man." I'd seen a lot by that young age, what with the drinking and the fighting my parents had done, and then my mama's pitiful alcoholic death when I was 5. Life was good for a while with my granddaddy on his five-cow dairy farm, but he didn't open his eyes one crisp April morning. He died when I was 9. After a few months bouncing around amongst relatives, Jim Evans, a great uncle by marriage, took me in and became my legal guardian. Not only did he raise me up, Jim is the one who granted me my nickname, Joey. It's the name everybody knows me by. It requires some explaining. My mother was a Grisham, no relation to the writer. Her folks were from the mountains of North Georgia, and her great-grandfather was a brother to the wife of Joseph Emerson Brown, governor during what the old folks called either the War Between the States or the War of Northern Aggression. My Aunt Mamie says she didn't learn that some folks called it the Civil War until she was in the 6th grade, the same year she realized that Robert E. Lee and the South had lost. After Reconstruction, Brown, who constituted 1/3 of the powerful Georgia political partnership known as the Bourbon Triumvirate, served as a U.S. Senator. His son, Joseph Magee Brown, later served 2 terms as governor prior to World War I. He retired a wealthy banker. It didn't help us none. 2 generations later, when I was born, my liquor-loving parents were poor as red dirt. Clinging to these highfalutin ancestors, my mama named me, her only child, Joseph Brown Gerald. While the Brown name had cachet in Georgia, the Geralds, my daddy's people, were known as just poor white trash. They'd called me Joe, and that's what I went by until the day Jim welcomed me into his house. He put the croaker sack full of my clothes in what would be my room and then studied on my papers, reading my birth certificate. He raised his head. He was wearing his black horn-rimmed glasses and looked into my eyes. "Joseph Brown Gerald," he said, relishing each syllable. "That's too long, son, and Joe's too plain. We're going to call you Joe B. Joe B. Gerald. How you like that?" I smiled. I liked that extra syllable, the sonorous ring of my new name. I've been Joe B. Gerald ever since. "Please, Jim, let me go out there. I'll stay in the car." He dropped the column shifter in reverse and began backing down the driveway. He turned to look at the street, making direct eye contact with me. We were not blood kin, but we both have dark hair, although his was tinged with gray and blue eyes. My daddy and Jim actually looked a lot alike, and even though they could not have been more different, they both had quick tempers. Jim was clenching his teeth, his lips tight. He slowed the car almost to a stop right before reaching the street. "Son, this is a bad scene. I might be out there all night. We have a man in jail. We need more evidence. We have a complicated situation with 2 dead bodies." I never pleaded with him for anything before, but something got into me. "Please, Jim, it's still summer. I don't have school tomorrow. I'll stay in the car if you want me to, but I really want to go. Please let me go. You told me I'd have to grow up and see things if I lived with you. I want to. I want to do it." There was a flash in his eye, a conflicted glimmer that said he didn't want me to see it, but that he wanted me with him. I sensed his loneliness, a loneliness I would know many years later when I grew up and became a lawman and understood what most others don't about the abysmal depths the human condition can reach. It wears on the soul of even the hardiest cops and attorneys. Jim was 50 years old. I was the only boy he would ever have when he could call his own. He wanted me to see what he did for a living. He wanted me to see how good he was at his job. He wanted me there, even though he knew very well that a 10-year-old boy shouldn't be at the scene of a double-child homicide. I was all he had. He was all I had. He let me go, so I went. Thank you very much.